They wiggle. They jiggle. They look seductively straight into the camera and promise you paradise. And then deliver you into a living hell. It's a story as old as the Bible. And it's a real-life story here in Texas, where a certain developer is employing very young women to pose scantily clad on social media in order to lure would-be Hispanic immigrant home buyers into buying land at their development. Once in that promised paradise quickly turns into something else, a neighborhood prone to flooding, diseased waters, unsanitary living conditions and crime. What seems like the very den of Satan. But you would never know it looking at these young women's Instagram. They are half naked. They are selling unsuspecting immigrants a very sexy slice of the American dream. The developers of Terrenos Houston and Colony Ridge are using young immigrant girls to do their dirty work. And people are falling for it. By the droves. It's right there on their social media pages. Beautiful girls. Beautiful houses. Land. And it's all over TikTok. Come live with us. Claim your dream today. It looks too good to be true. Because it is. Keep watching. These are young girls who are social media obsessed and don't care about the life-ruining consequences of what they are doing. The people they are hurting. The families who are suffering. All you have to do is wave money in their faces and they are good to go for social media and possibly more. So what's the problem with using young, poor, naive girls as Instagram and TikTok models to do your bidding? Well, for starters, these young women have often escaped horrible conditions in their home country, poverty, corruption, war, and they have no idea what they are doing and who they are hurting. They just love being on camera and getting paid for it. Terrenos Houston and Colony Ridge, owned by developer John Harris, are recruiting these girls straight out of high school Jeffrey Epstein style. One girl in particular just turned 21 and found her way into real estate without going through any of the correct channels. All she does is smile and wave and promise would-be home buyers the American dream. You might see her heavily made-up face smiling and waving. Wearing tight midriff-bearing clothing and shaking her assets seductively for the camera. Driving a Mercedes. But in reality it's unclear what she does or who she does to keep her job. Word on the street is that she's doing more than just posing. We think a certain sales manager could tell us so much more. Or an ex-wife could. For it's she and their kids who are paying the price for whatever it is these girls are bringing to the table. Are they there for other purposes? You be the judge. At some point there has to be some accountability. People are lying and making promises they just can't keep. To customers. To these all too young and no longer innocent girls. And then they are turning around and promising a paradise that doesn't exist, making easy money by being easy. Conning people who eventually invest their life savings to have it stolen right out from under them while law enforcement and government agencies do nothing. Meanwhile, the reports keep coming in from those who have been illegally foreclosed on by John Harris and his ilk. Because meanwhile, it's business as usual at Terrenos Houston. Mothers who are trying to get anyone, from the government to listen to what has happened in their community. Neighbors foreclosed on and now living in their car. Others with no water, bathing and drinking out of a neighbor's hose. People who have been swindled into buying land for $80,000 only to find out that it's worth a tiny fraction of that when tragedy strikes, and they are forced to sell. Tens of thousands of dollars down the drain. All day every day at Terrenos Houston and Colony Ridge. Hundreds if not thousands of families impacted negatively by their experience at these housing developments. What's more, these shady developers corrupt immigrant communities even more by hiring other immigrants to stalk anyone who goes against Terrenos Houston. We have reports of goons sitting in their cars watching and waiting and intimidating law-abiding citizens Scientology style, even going so far as to rent apartments in the same complexes to spy on and watch and intimidate those who have tried to take on John Harris and company for its rampant corruption. Meanwhile, it's business as usual at Terrenos Houston and Colony Ridge. Promised paradise, but this instead. Flooding. Raw sewage pouring out of the ground. Sex crimes. Drunk drivers. Thugs on loose. Criminal mob boss-like behavior on the part of the powers that be. We are a rapidly growing group of citizens who have been harmed by the developers of Terrenos Houston and its sister company, Colony Ridge. These are land developments outside of Houston that are home to a primarily immigrant Hispanic community. People who bought land here say they are struggling to stay afloat, sometimes quite literally, amid what are described as horrific living conditions put in place by the developer, a Houston real estate mogul named John Harris. They are now banding together to bring awareness to a myriad of problems plaguing these largely Latino communities. Among the claims, Harris and his team are selling flood-prone lands to people without disclosing that fact. In fact, the company does not disclose the flooding issues anywhere during their sales process, citizens claim. The surrounding city of Plum Grove has been fighting the county of Liberty, Texas to stop Harris Company from continuing to develop ruthlessly without proper management of their sewage. People have brought to the county countless and Judge J. Knight environmental issues that they say being violated by this self-proclaimed developer. Yet the county keeps approving the platting of land, the citizen group notes. And believe it or not, flooding is at the more pleasant end of the spectrum. One citizen from the neighboring city of Plum Grove wrote,
"Thousands of gallons of raw sewage are being dumped out on the ground, which is not only disgusting, but we also worry that it will eventually end up in our water system since everyone out here has their own water well."
Multiple sources have told us the company stalks and intimidates anyone who complains at the conditions, Scientology style, according to organizers. We've also had sources tell us that because people from this company believe in Santeria, it is a common practice for them to throw dead animals at people's yards and perform rituals against them. It is their belief that spirits are going to help them stop opposition. Now it's starting to sound like something from Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil, but in this case it's more like Midnight in the Garbage Dump of Good and Evil. Citizens say they feel like they have a good case against John Harris and Company because, among many other things, real estate law in Texas was modified after Hurricane Harvey to state that sellers must disclose if the property they are selling has flooded, or is in a flood zone.
This is a grassroots effort to help educate the public and at least prevent further damage, explains one of the organizers. We need this to stop, and we are hoping to involve the federal government and the media so that action is taken that prevents this from happening ever again. On behalf of all the families impacted by this wrongdoing and those who may be impacted by this in the future, we are demanding that this stop now.
Because meanwhile, it's business as usual at Terrenos Houston.